So you guys cool with that idea, yes? Over here, gentlemen, somewhere, I think you were asking a very good question, which is, how did this course get developed, right? So it's a longer story. Here's the essence of it. And this goes all the way back to the beginnings of my style, my approach to conversation hypnosis. As many of you may know, I used to be a lawyer. I used to work for a big, high-powered law firm in the UK. And I left, which was a wonderful thing to do. And then I had a sudden, interesting crisis, which I realized when I left and sat in my wonderful office, ready to take on all these grateful and receiving clients that would be welcoming me for wonderfully helping them through their pain and suffering and make their life better. And I'd be a guru and a star and people would love me. And suddenly I found myself a week later sitting in my office alone. And no one had shown up. And all the people I expected to queue up outside actually was my house, my office was my house, another little error. And then they weren't there, and I thought, this is crazy. So then, of course, I went, I know what's happened. They just don't know how good hypnosis is. So I went around and told all my friends, all my family, or even strangers, what an amazing thing hypnosis is and why they should fix all their problems with me. And you know what happened then? They started avoiding me. Right? So then I suddenly figured that, something's not working right here. Something's missing. And around about the same sort of time, I also formulated the idea, the plan of becoming an executive coach as a much more lucrative practice. Coaching typically can do pretty much the same thing as hypnosis. It's just you pay more. It's for one of those weird reasons, right? So it's more lucrative. And I, having come from a law firm, saw what our senior partners charged. It was a lot. And I thought, I'd like to charge that too. So the only way I could figure out doing that was executive coaching. That didn't exist in the UK at the time. Here's the problem. I left my law firm at the age of 27. That's kind of a tender, wet behind the ears and green-eyed and any other metaphor you want to use for someone who has no idea what they're doing. That was it, right? I just had a wonderful delusion of grandeur, which luckily sustained me through my periods of ineptitude, because otherwise I never would have started. But the idea I came up with is, why don't I just coach all these high-level executives, people I actually used to work with as a lawyer. I was a junior lawyer, but I would still be working with the CEOs of companies and stuff like that. Because I actually quite enjoyed their company. I knew there was a certain rigor to them. They had fast minds, and I enjoyed working at a fast pace. I knew there were type A personalities. At the time, I was more type A. I have now downgraded to type B, I believe, or maybe C. One day I'll actually aspire to failing. I want a type F personality, a whole new category just for me. But then I also realized that to coach these people, the average age of a CEO is late 40s, early 50s, right? I was 27. That means they were roughly twice my age. I knew nothing about business. Clearly, my practice was empty, right? I hadn't done any crazy MBAs, PhDs. I had no business experience. I had no secret magic wand that makes them suddenly become more successful. I knew nothing about office politics. This is all the stuff that they're interested in. I have nothing to offer. But being self-delusional, I thought I'll become an executive coach, right? What can I do? What can I offer? What can I do? And I suddenly realized, well, I know hypnosis. Hypnosis is cool. Why? Because people solve their own damn problems. I don't have to know a thing. They get to do it all. So I just turn up, they pay me lots of money to solve their own problems, they think I'm great, they pay me lots of money, and life's good, right? One problem. Try taking your pocket watch out and going sleepy, sleepy, sleepy to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That does not go across very well, right? Actually it does, but only after they know you really well. At that point, they're just like any other person, interested, fascinated. But when you come to a meeting to pitch for your services, and it is a pitch, and you try and tell them about the pocket watch and how cool it is, and you try and explain hypnotic phenomena, they will give you a fast-track exit out the door because they cannot go to their shareholder and say, yes, I got hypnotized to be a good CEO, right? It doesn't work. So I was in a dilemma. I knew hypnosis worked. It was the only thing I could offer these people, and yet I couldn't use it. That really sucks, by the way, guys, right? So that's where the idea of conversation hypnosis in general started to develop. Now, at the time, especially during my pitch meetings, the sales meetings, talking to the executives, I had at the time seemed natural, but I had a weirdly impressive close rate. I didn't get in front of CEOs very often, but when I did, I closed close to 100%, right? The reason I say close to is the only person I didn't close with, I really didn't like, so I did my very utmost to make sure the meeting fell apart, which it did. I was very good at that part. And it's all in the setup. We'll talk more about that when we come towards the end of this training, right? And I realized many years afterwards that the style of approach I took during those conversations was actually quite different to the style I used in the actual coaching sessions themselves. And so we have two different streams of conversation hypnosis essentially as a result of that. I call this the active and the passive stream. The active stream is the stream that you guys are most familiar with. How many of you have done any of my other conversation hypnosis trainings, not the one on the school, right? Okay, so that's the active style. It's the one where you do most of the talking. When I'm teaching, I'm using more of the active style of conversation hypnosis. Yes, we use hypnosis to teach hypnosis. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Right? It requires you to do most of the talking, they do most of the listening. When you can get that context set up, it's very powerful. There's a couple of problems with it, though. One is it doesn't fit most social contexts. You standing there and on your soapbox and parading all your wonderful knowledge, it's a very difficult moment to engineer outside of a formal coaching therapy style session. Make sense? So the active style is all about you doing most of the talking. It's about stories, it's about language patterns, it's about embedded suggestions, and all the good stuff that you know and love, right? But the problem is it doesn't fit into the social context. It doesn't get people into your room to actually have that consultation with in the first place. And in the actual consultation, if you're doing all the talking, you have no idea whether they're actually interested or not until at the end. And I'll tell you one of the ways I found this out. Back in the days when I first started doing hypnotherapy, again, it wasn't very good. Luckily, I was delusional. My style of hypnosis was this. Okay, what's your problem? Great. Close your eyes, go to trance, maybe do some phenomena, usually not because I was scared. As I said, delusional. No one can pop my delusion. No, don't pop my delusion by not having an actual phenomena. And part of that problem was that then I'd spend an hour talking to them, and at the end, it either worked or it didn't, right? And my solution to that one was, rather than asking them and feeling really embarrassed when it failed, which often it did, right, is to kind of gently shuffle them out the door. So if anything broke, they only noticed once they left, and it's like, you touched it, you broke it, it's your fault, not mine, right? Which, when you think about it, is an awful attitude as a hypnotherapist. It's just terrible, right? I advise the opposite now, by the way. If it's going to break, let it break in front of you, because now you can fix something, right? But this is my learning curve. So if I speak to them for an hour and I have no idea what's going on, and at the end of that, I hope for the best that it's worked, then maybe 1 in 10 clients goes out happy, and the other 9 go, what a waste of time, what a loser, and then my delusional shield have to come up to protect me at that point, right? So then I started experimenting with a more conversational style, mostly for the executive coaching, but also in those contexts, an interactive style of hypnosis, so I knew where we were at each part of the session, and then if things were going wrong, I knew early on if it was going wrong, so I could fix it then, not once they've already left and it's all messed up, if you get the idea, right? That developed even further into the consultation process, where I would sit down with someone, and I very quickly intuited that if I just do all the talking, I have no idea whether I'm hitting the right points, if they're actually getting what they want. So the only way I could do that is by asking questions. But the questions are very loaded. They are what I would call more hypnotic questions. And that's the passive style of conversation hypnosis. This is the style that we'll be learning here. When you do conversation hypnosis or applied conversation hypnosis well in normal social settings, it will sound as though you're not doing anything, because you'll be silent 90% of the time. The 10% of the time that you are actually talking will be incredibly important. You'll have a disproportional impact. And that will do two things for you. And the first thing it'll do is, they will talk themselves into a trance. We'll be discussing more about how to do that, as that's why you're here, of course, right? So the first thing they'll do is they'll talk themselves into a trance. You don't have to convince them into it. That's a wonderful place to be in, right? Number two, once they're there, you can switch to the active style once you're in the right place, and you know the things that you say will have a disproportional impact, once again, in a very good way this time, right? It'll be the equivalent of the convincer that you were asking about before. They'll be going like, this is amazing, of course, why didn't I think of that before, right? And you could be giving them the exact same advice out of that kind of trance, and they'll go, I've tried that, doesn't work. You get the idea, guys? So it looks and sounds as though you're not doing very much, but the things that you're doing are actually very powerful, and they accumulate. They're compounding. It's the law of compounding effect. The more the conversation compounds the conversational trance, the more they first of all, will enjoy the conversation, the faster they want to carry on down that path, and the more the things that you say will have a greater impact, weight, and meaning for them. And that gives you, by the way, a great responsibility too. This is not a casual tool. Some of you may have heard me say before, hypnosis is anything but a casual relationship. This is especially important for this kind of conversation. Do not treat this tool lightly. And in fact, once you get good at it, at first when you learn it, I fully expect you to go out there and do it with everyone. And that's when you're not very good at it, because you won't do much harm with it, right? Once you start getting good at it and it starts to really hit home, you're going to actually want to dial it back. And you're going to ask yourself a very serious question, which is, when is the right time to do this? And most often the answer will be, not now, right? Because it creates an incredible amount of intimacy between people as well. And that's not appropriate for a lot of things. Does it make sense, guys? And I fully expect some of you to make the mistake of doing that. A few people thinking, oh, it's fine, it'll be okay. And suddenly you'll have relationships you don't want to have, and people who want to basically deepen a relationship you don't want to deepen, and it'll be your fault, right? So I'm just warning you up front about this. This is not a casual tool. Do not play with people with this. It's a very powerful method, but treat it with respect, guys. Please, you need to have a really a strong desire to help people. You want to be a force for good. And sometimes the best help you can give to someone is to step back and let them make their own mistakes. Does it make sense, guys? Everyone good with that idea? Does it give you a bit more of the background to it? One of the very big reasons for actually formally codifying this process, I used to do it. I had no idea how to teach it, because this is incredibly difficult to teach. And you have no idea how much it broke my brain trying to figure out how to teach other people to do this, because how do you teach someone to do something, how does a fish teach a bird to swim? Right? It's just like you flap your fins. What fins, right? So the reason I actually specifically codified this is for the diploma students. It's part of the process. You'll learn the essence of the mechanism as well for the sales process, to get actually people into your therapy sessions, to be clients who are just ecstatic with being your clients, requires a certain kind of conversation. A conversation which I initially botched for an entire year, which alienated me from a lot of people, right? It's a very important conversation, and it's a very delicate conversation. If you get it right, you will get close to 100% closing rate too. If you get it wrong, you will repel people more quickly than the crazy person who doesn't wash and casually, has random bouts of violence. People just go, ooh, not that one. So that's the reason we went through the trouble to actually codify this process. It's a very powerful process. Hopefully I'm emphasizing that part. And it requires a very light hand. Have you ever watched someone pushing a child on a swing? Yeah? Have you ever seen someone push a child off a swing? Right? It's a delicate balance, right? I hope you get the sense of what we're doing here. You will, of course, push each other off each other's metaphorical swings a number of times here. It's a safe environment to do that. I fully expect that to happen. It's okay for it to happen. Just make sure that if you happen to be on the swing at the time you're getting pushed off it, and you don't like it so much, you go, all right, let's not have that conversation again, and just take that mental note of that. Does it make sense, guys? Any other questions at this point?
Just for my own curiosity, so I'm used to, when I get home and read something back, but I don't see any books or theoretical things.
Yes.
Can you tell me some?
Just practice.
Only practice.
I want you to be able to do, I don't care if you know why you do something or how it works. What I care about is at the end of these 5 days, you can do it. But don't worry, there'll be lots of principles we'll talk about. There'll be theories I'll be feeding in through the exercises. But my priority is to make sure that when you leave, is you know how to do this stuff. The theoretical aspects will be woven in as much as is necessary to help you do the practice. Mm-hmm. But I'm not big on theory. And here's the big reason why, by the way. And this is an important point. No one actually knows what hypnosis is anyways, right? The hypnosis has been studied for about 100 years formally in academic circles, by which I mean using the scientific method. Before that, it was studied informally by medical professionals and other people for some 200-300 years, since the time of Mesmer, and all kinds of different weird theories were presented as to why hypnosis works. And if you ascribe to them, great. I'm not going to diss any of them because I can't. Even the researchers do not agree on what hypnosis is. So, what's the point, right? I will give you my perspective on it, and I'll give you my sense of the theory, and I'll give you a sense of my theory of everything in terms of what I think the different theories of academics, how they actually say the same thing in different ways. I think they do. But there's no proof to that because currently hypnosis is not that stage in development. Hence, I could write a book on theory, but it would be essentially meaningless because it would just be you listening to me rant, which I'm glad to do, but maybe more in private time than on your very important public time.
Okay,
Does that
thank
make
you.
sense?
Yeah.